What if I told you that one of the most powerful gods in a religion, the creator of the entire universe, was basically demoted? Well, that's exactly what happened. Today, we're diving into the incredible story of Brahma, the Hindu creator. It's a wild journey that, believe it or not, shined a light on the fascinating and sometimes tense history between Hinduism and Buddhism. Okay, so first things first, we really need to get a handle on just how big of a deal Brahma was. In the beginning, he wasn't just a god, he was the creator. So when you look at the classic images of Brahma, you're seeing pure cosmic power and wisdom. He's usually this wise, white-bearded figure with four heads. And that's not just for show. Each head faces one of the cardinal directions, symbolizing that he's watching over the entire universe. And you'll see him sitting on a lotus flower, which is this huge symbol of purity and divine birth, like he's emerging right from the creative fabric of the cosmos.
So who is this guy really? Well, he's 1/3 of the Hindu Trimurti. That's the big trinity of gods, right alongside Vishnu, who's the preserver, and Shiva, the destroyer. His four mouths are said to have brought forth the four sacred Vedas. And check out what he's holding. It's really telling. There are no weapons. Instead, you've got symbols of pure creation and knowledge. Sacred texts, a water pot representing life itself, a ladle for sacred fire, and a rosary that marks the passage of time. He's all about building things, a cosmic architect, not a warrior god.
So you'd think, with a resume like creator of the universe, he'd be one of the most worshipped gods in all of Hinduism, right? But he's not even close. And that brings us to the real mystery here. Why on earth did the creator god fall from grace?
Yeah, if we look at the history, it's pretty clear. Around the 7th century CE, Brahma's popularity just tanks. The groups that were all about worshiping him start to fade away, and he gets totally overshadowed by the growing fan bases for Vishnu and Shiva. So the big question remains, why? Well, the clues are actually hidden in the myths themselves.
Turns out there are a couple of major stories that try to explain this. The first one, from a text called the Shiva Purana, is pretty dramatic. It says Brahma and Vishnu got into an argument about who was greater, and Brahma straight up lied to win a challenge. Shiva was not impressed and cursed him, saying people would stop worshiping him. Then there's another version from the Vishnu Purana that kind of sidelines him from the get-go. It says he was born from a lotus that grew out of Vishnu's belly button, which right away makes him seem less important. In that story, once his work as creator was finished, he just wasn't needed anymore. And you can still see the impact of these stories today. It's wild. You'll find thousands and thousands of temples for Vishnu and Shiva all over India. But for Brahma, you can probably count the major ones on two hands, maybe even one. His worship didn't just take a hit, it practically vanished. So that begs the question, right? If Brahma's own religion basically forgot about him, was that it? Was that the end of his story? Absolutely not. His journey was about to take a massive, unexpected detour, right into the middle of a whole new religion. So just as Brahma's influence was dimming in Hinduism, something else was happening. Buddhism, which also started in India, was going through this huge transformation. And this shakeup created a perfect opportunity for some old gods to find a new lease on life. Okay, let's look at the timing here, because it's super important. Buddhism gets going around the 6th century BCE. For hundreds of years after that, Brahma worship is actually a pretty big deal in Hinduism. But then, right around the 7th century CE, when his popularity starts to drop, a new type of Buddhism called Vajrayana starts gaining steam. And this version of Buddhism had room for a ton of gods. By the 12th century, you have Buddhist texts officially writing down how they've brought in Hindu gods. Yeah, that timing is definitely not a coincidence. So, the key thing to get here is that Vajrayana Buddhism didn't just invent a bunch of new gods out of thin air. Nope. They looked at what was already there in the Brahmanical faith, which is like the precursor to modern Hinduism. And they adopted a whole bunch of its gods, plugging them into their own new, very complex system. All right, this is where it gets super interesting. Let's really connect the dots and see what this divine adoption looked like on the ground. A lot of the time, it was like these Hindu gods suddenly had a twin, a doppelganger, pop up in this new Buddhist system. Just look at this. It lays out the pattern perfectly. You can see how these specific jobs get filled by new Buddhist figures who have suspiciously similar traits. You've got Indra, the Hindu god of storms with his thunderbolt, and boom, over in Buddhism, you have Vajrapani, who also wields a thunderbolt. The god of wealth, Kubera, he's got a counterpart in Jambala. And our guy,
Brahma, the god of knowledge, he gets a parallel in Manjusri, the Buddhist god of wisdom. The roles, the symbols, it's a clear connection.
And it wasn't always a parallel or a counterpart. Sometimes it was just a straight-up copy-paste. Sarasvati, the Hindu goddess of learning, and Ganapati, who you probably know as Ganesha, they both show up in the Buddhist lineup, often with the same names and very little changed. This kind of religious borrowing was happening all over the place.
But, and this is a huge but, this wasn't always some friendly, neighborly sharing of gods. What started out as adoption often twisted into something way more aggressive. We're talking about divine subjugation. And this is where the story gets really dark and, honestly, really fascinating.
This quote here really says it all. Bringing Hindu gods into the fold wasn't always a compliment. In a lot of Buddhist art and writing, you see these gods getting literally crushed and trampled by Buddhist deities. It was a very powerful, very visual message aimed squarely at the Brahmanical faith.
And the examples are pretty shocking. Ganesha, the beloved remover of obstacles, he's sometimes shown as this evil spirit getting stomped on. And it wasn't just him. The great Trimurti, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, along with Indra, are sometimes relabeled as Maras, or wicked beings, and shown being trampled. And for Brahma specifically, in some images, you see Buddhist gods grabbing him by his hair. It's intense. So let's be clear about what was going on here. This wasn't just about art. This was theological warfare. By showing the top gods of Hinduism in these, frankly, humiliating positions, Buddhists were sending a crystal clear message. Our way is better, our gods are stronger, and our truth beats your truth. Wow, what a journey, right? From supreme creator to a forgotten god to a conquered enemy in a rival faith. It really makes you wonder, is a god's power just based on what humans think of them at any given time, or is there something deeper going on? To get a handle on that, we can actually circle back to Hindu philosophy. So there's this really important idea about two different ways of seeing ultimate reality, or Brahman. First, you have what's called Saguna Brahman. Think of this as God with attributes, a personal, relatable being with a name and a form who gets involved in the world. All the gods like Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva, they exist on this level. But then there's Nirguna Brahman. This is God without attributes. It's the formless, unchanging, absolute reality that's beyond any name, any story, any definition we could possibly give it.
So here's the difference in a nutshell. On one hand, you've got the personal god, Saguna, who has a form and qualities and is someone you can worship. On the other, you have this absolute reality, Nirguna, formless, totally beyond our world of cause and effect. It's a truth you realize, not a deity you pray to. Now, if you think about it through this lens, the entire story we just went through, Brahma's creation, his fall from grace, the whole conflict, all of that happens in the realm of Saguna, the world of forms and names and stories.
And that brings us to one last big idea to chew on. Maybe this whole crazy story of Brahma, his rise, his fall, and his role in this divine clash, isn't just about religious rivalry. What if it's also a mirror of our own deep philosophical search? A quest to understand a reality that's so big, so absolute, that it can never truly be captured by any one story, any single form, or any one name, whether we call it Brahma, or Shiva, or something else entirely.
If you want to dive into more stories like this about the gods of ancient India, you should definitely check out our playlist on the topic. And of course, for more deep dives, make sure to subscribe to Notebook Summaries. Thanks for joining me.